We are starting off our spring series. You know what that means? We're getting close. And today, we're going to be talking about crop rotation. Batavia's #1 favorite in the whole wide world, crop rotation. Right here on the Backyard Gardens podcast.
To have a good harvest, one must plant good seeds and must also use the right kind of fertilizer. The carrots have grown large and firm. How good they will taste.
Welcome to the Backyard Gardens podcast, where we talk about all things gardening and give the information out for you to be successful in your garden, whether it's your first or your last. We are your hosts, Ben, the backyard gardener, and
Batavia, the front yard gardener.
one in the country.
One in the city.
Now get ready as we dig deep into this wonderful world of gardening as we learn to grow and grow for change. Do you rotate your crops?
You know what I rotate? I rotate indoor house plants. I rotate the hell out of my furniture in the house. I rotate even outdoor furniture. Crops,
But you don't rotate your crops.
I mean, not in the traditional sense. I plant things in different places.
What is it, a tradition in your family to rotate crops? Yeah. I don't get it.
My ancestors taught us how to, maybe this is like the, how I was basically amending my beds and feeding my beds unknowingly. Yeah. I grow things in different places, but not with that whole 4-bed rotation method. It's not on purpose. You know, it's only to say this year last year I had trouble getting to my cucumbers. So I'm going to move those to a different bed where it's easier for me to get to, It's that kind of thing.
Right.
So.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So crop rotation is literally what it sounds like. Mm-hmm. Each year you rotate your crops around for a multitude of reasons. If you're supposed to, if you feel so inclined that it is actually important. So you can see this if you live near farms or anything like that. You can definitely see it there. Mm-hmm. Like if you drive by farms a lot, you'll see like one year they'll have corn, and the next year they'll have soybean, and the next year they'll have corn, and and I mean it goes back to like way back. I mean, this is like biblical stuff too, where it's like every 7 years you let the crop, let it rest, which essentially will give you some of the same effects.
Yeah.
So there's that as well. And there's a lot of people that'll rotate with just like cover crops and stuff like that. But we're here to talk about the actual active crop rotation, and is it really worth it in your small garden?
Yeah.
I think that's really where we're going with it. So personally.
Yeah, I think that's the piece that, and I mean, take some of this from me with a grain of salt, because this is just another step away from putting a plant in dirt.
Well, I take everything from you with a grain of salt, so.
Is that implying that everything I give is salty, or?
Well, lately, yes, but no.
Yeah, man. Listen, when you were talking, I was thinking about the episode that you were referencing, and I'm like, my brain isn't going to go back that far. Like, I'm just going to.
What episode was I referencing?
I don't know. That's what I'm telling you. I was hoping that Leonard would have gotten it, would have seen the befuddled look on my face. And
what was I saying?
I don't remember that either. Come on now. Listen, damn. I told you I'm on borrowed time here. You
ain't lying.
So anyway, the point of what I was about to say has escaped me too.
I think it was one of our new mini-sodes you were talking about. The ones that were really brief.
Yeah.
It was when Leonard just informed me, thanks pal, that it was when we were getting close to, like, it was time to harden off. And that's my excitement. Is that what was taking you back?
I like when you're excited. It's a good look on you. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. Versus like, grizzly and grim.
Hey, look, I gotta come. So I did. The other day, I put the arches up in my yard, and I did a video, and I didn't realize that I did this. I made it, and I was all business. And somebody on Instagram put on there, I don't know how you do it, but you make not smiling look very cool. I was like, thanks. It didn't even cross my mind to smile in that video. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you know why I don't smile a lot?
Why's that?
Because I have thin eyes, and when I smile, my eyes look like they shut. So I don't smile a lot.
So you consciously don't smile for that purpose?
Basically, yeah.
You've trained yourself not to.
Basically. And plus, I just want to look like a dick everywhere I go.
Okay.
No.
There was a recent episode, and I'm not going to be able to place the win, and it doesn't really matter, where we were talking about being weirdos.
That's a lot of them, but go ahead.
Oh, you know what? It wasn't even a recent episode. It's on Backyard Gardens TV on YouTube when we did the 40 questions.
Yeah.
And we were talking about being weirdos. And in that moment, I was just like, gosh, I mean, you're amping it up, man. You top out every time we talk about it. Just when I thought you couldn't get more weird, here we are.
Hey, look, my wife loves me for my weirdness, so
There's
works.
love for everyone.
There is.
Yeah.
There is.
Here we are.
So,
all
anyways.
right, crop rotation. So, the thing that caught my attention when you were talking 10 minutes ago was more around the small garden aspect, right?
Yeah.
So we oftentimes learn about principles that are specific to gardens that were from 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, that were like big fields of gardens and or farms, right? And so in my mind, I always pause and say, how much or how little am I growing like that? And does that principle that they would use need to apply to what I'm doing in my little small space? I don't also want to use that as an excuse, like it's the small garden, and so I don't need to do X, Y, and Z, because I could totally do that, and I'm trying not to.
Well, much to your probably surprise and unwillingness to believe me, I tend to agree with you on this subject, cautiously agree with you on the subject of crop rotation. I know that it's been ingrained in my head that we need to rotate, and so first of all, let's get one thing out of the way. What do you consider a small or big garden?
Should I change the confused look on my face? Like, I couldn't respond to you almost maybe somewhat partially agree with me. It's like such new territory.
It's not been a secret.
Yeah, but
it's that you get into your head, Batavia. Look, Batavia.
Looking.
And so actually, speaking of which, to the day, it's been 1 year since we first talked, to the day of recording. So happy anniversary. Thank you for being here.
And now you're going to read me. Listen, you're going to get me all warm and gushy and emotional. Yeah.
I'm going to give you a shit sandwich.
Happy anniversary.
I'm giving you a shit sandwich. So you
wait, the good stuff is you just gave me the meat, and now it's okay. Go ahead, lay the bread on me.
You spend so much time trying to have me bicker with you that you overlook the fact that I drop breadcrumbs for you.
Nope.
Because I do almost believe you, or almost agree with you.
In this moment about me always finding a way where you're disagreeing with me, I'm going to disagree. Like, it's not it. There's literally an episode where I say it's the healthy gardening, growing a garden for a healthier lifestyle episode, where I'm coming back. I got the English breakfast tea. All right, I'm springing back into action. You say something like, I asked about whether or not, growing vegetables, generally eating vegetables is a part of a healthy lifestyle. I said, most people agree with that. Wouldn't you? And you're like, well, I mean, come on, really? And you're trying to tell me that in that moment, again, okay, straight through, most people, vegetables, they consider them a part of a healthy lifestyle. Young Ben, do you agree?
This is why I have Batavia on the show, everybody.
The look on his face when I asked, and not even asked, I was like, you would agree, right? And you're like, well, not really. I think it really depends on, It
does.
How you define vegetables. So anyway, moving along. There's a lot of evidence, longtime listeners know, that you commonly disagree with me.
Commonly, but there's always...
You love me. And I love you, but it doesn't mean that you don't take at every turn.
I love it. This one goes down in history, everybody.
Yeah, man. All right, back to crop
coming.
rotation. Absolutely.
So what's considered a big garden to you?
Oh, big garden. I'm going to say I have to go in bed sizes. That's the way that my mind works.
Okay, square footage?
No, I won't be able to do that math.
Okay.
So I think that a 20-foot by 4-foot space is a large garden for your average, apartment and or home, right?
That's
so your home
square
gardener.
Feet.
All right, 80 square feet. Let's call it 100. Let's just make it even. 100.
Call it 100.
80 is even too, but you get my point. Like nice round number. So I'd say like 100 square feet.
Okay, and that's considered large to you?
I think that's large for the home gardener. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't consider that a large garden.
Really, you don't?
I don't, and this is why. Because
no, seriously, this is all good.
Before I had my wild garden, my 4 beds were 128 square feet. So I think it's getting there, but I really look at like a large garden. I'm going to say, and especially for this topic, I would say something like an 1/8 of an acre or 1/4 of an acre, like a big garden plot. Right.
Yeah, see, the way that I look at it, and again, you always disagree with me, and or I always disagree with you. But I think when it comes to a garden and a home garden, it's just about how much property you have. Yeah. And then you're dedicating some space to that. And I know so many people that grow in like the equivalent to one raised bed. So right. They have a little spot they've dug out for a tomato plant and, some greens or something like that. So it really is, in that instance, in my mind, that's small, right? Well, and so if you go beyond that, in my mind, it's larger.
Yeah. And so the reason why I bring it up is not to say like, oh, your garden's small, your garden's big, or you're not using enough room that you have. The reason why is because when you talk about crop rotation, it's about, I immediately think about large farms. And we're talking about large farms that just have row after row after row after row of, pick your vegetable, for the sake of this, we'll pick the most common one grown, corn, in a farm. And, if you do that every year and you plant there, those vegetables use the same nutrients. So you will deplete the soil of what it needs. And so as you know, and I know, like if you plant peas, it puts nitrogen back into the soil. So you're replenishing. So there's all kinds of different ways you can do this, but that's why I think about it is because, we're monocropping is what it's called. And then you go back to your small garden where you have one tomato plant in a bed maybe, or one zucchini plant. And so if you're like, well, I want my zucchini plant to be there every year, is that really an issue? Because it's only one, right?
So using that and monocropping, or, the act of, the cage baby in part was built for that. The cage baby in my backyard, and if you're new here, welcome. But the cage baby is probably my pride and joy for my garden. It's basically a cage that covers 3 raised beds in my backyard garden. And I built it. And by I built, I mean I paid someone to build it. So it was built for the purpose of having room to grow as many tomatoes as that space would fit. And so the vision had been nothing but tomatoes would be in here now and forever. So in part, I've kind of designed a monocrop, and so it actually part of my I need to rotate crops has been, I have grown historically. Like, for all my live long days, tomatoes back there. Some years I have grown some other things. So I want to be fair and transparent and honest and all of those things that people are. But I've never had the problems that I understand could lead to the lack of crop rotation, or specifically the lack of when you grow the same thing over and over and over in the same space. Right.
And so the way it was impressed upon me is, you might not notice it for a couple years or something, but until you get like a bad nematode or something like that, that's just like a pain in the ass to get rid of. Yeah. Something that would and I think if I'm correct, some nematodes, you actually have to let your garden rest for a complete year and treat it.
Yeah.
So it's like until you get that problem, you might not notice it. And my reaction was like, come on, man, that's dramatic. You know what I mean? Like, you're not trying to win an Emmy, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, you know what? It's that weird thing of, and I had heard of crop rotation some years back. And in my 2019 garden, my collards, I've had real good luck with collards these last couple of years. And in my 2019 garden, I had collards in one bed, collard greens in one bed. And I'm just like, they're winning here. I shall grow them here from now on, right? And so I was sharing it, I think, on YouTube. And there was a comment around rotating them. And that kind of takes you into that whole dialogue. And let me know how far you want me to go down this road. You may have this as a part of the side B of crop rotation, the episodes. But the idea of some vegetables are more prone to disease, and some vegetables are really good targets for crop rotation.
Yeah,
you know.
Well, stop right there.
I'm stopping.
That's key, and I think that is important to
I'm
talk
all
about.
off. The English coffee I thought had kicked in, but
yeah,
not really.
I think that's key though, because some things are more susceptible to it, and now the question becomes, what are those some things?
I have a list.
You have their list?
I have a list, yeah.
Well, let's go through it.
Yeah, okay. So my list, and this is like a typical crop rotation, and you want to know where this list comes from?
Yeah.
This list comes from the great book that was gifted, Week by Week Vegetable Gardener's Handbook. This was a gift from my lovely co-host, Young Ben. But no, in all seriousness,
don't forget the young part.
Oh yeah, for now, yeah. So this one talks about, and I've seen this over and over, like they give you a 4-year plan.
Yeah.
So year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4.
You're reading the same week as me.
Aw, so sweet. See, look at that. All that love sprinkled through this, to cover up some of the shit pie that you've been passing out. So in this instance, they talk about plots, right?
Yeah.
And so you could tell who wrote this book too, and the use of plots. So in this case, in year 1, they're saying, and let's use plot as in a garden bed for our terms. So plot A is tomatoes and potatoes, which everywhere else I've read, those two things don't like each other, but I'm going to go with this. And then year one.
So you're putting all your faith into this one book, even though you've read in other places. I need to know this right now.
No, I'm not using this. I'm just giving examples here.
Okay, because it sounded to me like you were like, I'm going with it. I'm going to use it. I'm going to follow it.
Oh, no, I meant I'm just going to go with it for this dialogue, right?
You
this
got
is
to
all
be clear.
illustrative.
You got
this
to
is
be
all
clear.
illustrative people. I shall never rotate a crop. Mark
there
it
are
down.
thousands of people that just heard you say that. Never mind. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know.
I'm going to stop short. I'm going to stop short.
You have ruined gardens
It's
across
our anniversary.
the world.
I won't go any further.
Yeah. I should have just read tomatoes and kept moving. All right, so plot A, let's just call it tomatoes. Good grief. Plot B, carrots, beets, parsnips, spinach, lettuce. Right. And then plot C, cabbage, a whole bunch of brassicas, cabbage, Brussels sprouts. There's some cauliflower in there, rutabaga. And then plot D, the 4th garden bed, onions, garlic, leeks, peas, and beans. And I'm not going to go through everything for year 2, but now the idea is that plot A that had tomatoes, the next year, you're going to rotate that. So you're not going to grow tomatoes in that same plot. You're going to move your tomatoes to the 2nd garden bed, or plot B. And in plot A, you're going to now grow onions and leeks. So it's almost like this circular thing. So we first started with tomatoes in the first bed, plot A. Year 1, they're there. Year 2, we move that to plot B. Year 3, we move it to plot C. Year 4, we move it to plot D. And on and so forth.
Okay, I was going to say, don't go any farther because you're losing me. So basically, the 4-year plan, it rotates around. Mm-hmm. Right.
So it's grouped certain vegetables that like each other, that probably complement each other in that same growing space. And then you're basically moving them to another bed. So it's not like this jigsaw puzzle where you're moving all of your plants around.
Don't you love how they make it sound more simpler, easier than it really is. Because, you know, it's like, and part of it's my design flaw, I'm sure, but I've got trellises in the back side of 2 of my beds, but I don't have trellises in the back side of the other 2. So I can't do an easy rotation around.
You're getting me excited because it just occurred to me that you are 100% in agreement with me, but you just haven't realized it yet. No, in all seriousness.
I stand firm in the fact that I'm like, I'm not 100%. I'm 60% in agreement with you. I'll give you a solid 75.
Okay, I'll take it.
Wait,
man.
what's a C in school? A 77.
C, okay. Hey, that's
C minus.
Excuse me, lucky number. All right. So, and the reason why I've paused, in addition to it being more than the steps of putting a plant in dirt, and any time that I hear anything more than that, there's a pause. So even beyond that, this makes sense when it comes to the your ability to rotate crops in this way, having the space when you're on that 1/4 of an acre or 1/8 of an acre, right? It makes sense when you just have basically the same garden space over and over and over. So we've talked about long ago how a lot of gardens and farms still grow in rows, right?
Yeah.
That's not my garden space. It's not the garden space of any gardener that I know locally, right?
They don't grow in rows?
That they don't grow in rows, no.
Nobody you know up there grows in rows?
That I grow locally, no. Nobody that I know.
You grow in clumps?
Well, is that you being mean to me?
No, I'm asking you, okay. Do you grow in clumps?
I do know there's some people that like small farms and they have like rows that they grow in, but I'm talking about your, again, average home gardener. They grow either in containers or they grow in raised beds, and sure, in that raised bed there may be a row of vegetables, but I'm talking about rows that are like 60 feet long, 70 feet long, 80 feet long, like that. The traditional, when you drive on the highway or you're like in some country dirt road and you see the rows of corn like you were talking about, like that's when I say rows for this purpose I'm talking about. So in that instance, you can move those things from one plot A to plot B to plot C. So part of the issue that I've had has been, and I'm going to pull back here because I know I've been rambling. Part of the issue I've had is my garden beds are designed almost in part for specific things. Cage baby. There are 3 beds that now have that, that cage on top of it. This is an aesthetic thing. I like to cover my collard greens and kale with some type of fabric. I'm probably going to try that in the front yard, although I'm not crazy about it just because of the look, of having some tarp. And when I say tarp, I'm being, a little bit dramatic. Having some material like draped over my beds.
I would not put that in my front yard.
Yes, look, exactly. In the same response. But I think I'm going to do it in the spring, but we'll see. So with that in mind, I have designated certain areas in my garden for certain crops.
Yeah.
So that in my mind also limits my ability to have plot A move to plot B, move to plot C, year after year.
Yeah, I mean, I switch it up completely every year. So like this year, so you remember my back 2 beds last year, they were basically tomato, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I practice rotation because my biggest worry is 1, the nutrients, and then 2 is, and more so is this one, is the insects taking hold into a garden space. And let me tell you why in my space too, especially because it doesn't get as cold here. So we don't get that hard killing frost sometimes. Yeah. So, and not to rehash garden zone stuff, but I know somebody else who was in a zone 8A as well, but they're totally different from me. They don't ever get a frost. They stay like right at 32, barely, but they don't get hot until almost July. Yeah. So, there's some stuff they just can't grow. So it's like, it's 2 totally different things, but when you don't get those cold temperatures like that, like you can still have these insects come back. Yeah. And so that's why I'm very cautious about it. And I take note. And if, I feel that I need to change it, then I will. So I have those back 2 beds that are tomatoes. And typically what I do is I'll put the tomatoes up front, or I'll move them up a bed. But last year was the first year I did 2 beds of tomatoes. Okay. Well, now I'm going to rotate, and I got to I have my eggplants, which are nightshades. Yep. To go back into the same bed as one of the tomatoes. Yeah. Now, is that bad.
See, and that's the thing. And the thing I've seen most commonly is, and the potato is technically in the nightshade family. And that's the reason why I said I've read that these two things don't play together. So things like tomatoes, and I've also read that brassicas, you don't want to plant them where tomatoes were, or maybe vice versa. So I think part of the issue is not only is it rotating crops, it's not a single crop. You know, it's a family of crops, right? And I think we've brushed on it, but, you know, part of the benefit of rotating crops is it's almost like you're outrunning the pests, right?
Yeah.
You know, you don't want them to set up camp, you know, in that specific bed. So going back to the collard green bed, if I grew those year over year, issues that I may have with collards could, again, set up camp there. And what you really want to avoid is having some type of, I was going to say poison, but that's far too dramatic, infestation in your soil, right? You know, so I'm not in the business of like, while I add soil to every bed, I'm not in the business of like needing to replace soil, right? And so there's some things, and I can't think if I can find it as we talk, I'll mention it, or if Leonard could look it up. There's some fungus, I believe, for collards that once it sets in your soil, it's years before you get rid of it. And so part of the recommendation to rotate those collards, which I have done, and I'm going to do going into this year. So there will be 3 years that I've had collards in 3 different places. Part of the goal was to basically outrun that, right? You know,
right. Well,
even in my small beds. Yeah.
That's the whole trick. You move it so it can't take hold. You know, and it's really important that like it can't take hold in those beds. So you do practice some sort of crop rotation. That
is very specific. Like, I'm not just saying, oh, I want to see what happens if I grow collards over there. I'm moving them around because I love to grow collards. I love to eat collards, and I just don't want to ruin them. Right. So I am taking heed, and I did do a bit of research on that in particular. So yeah, I mean, I'm buying the hype, if you will. And let me say this. I want to be very clear. I believe in crop rotation. I believe that there's a place for it. I have a question mark around whether the things that we're experiencing, if you don't rotate your crops, how they impact your small home gardener. Right. You know, so I'm not going to go against what farmers have been doing for eons. Come on, I want to be realistic. But I'm saying when you break this down to a home gardener, it may not be as applicable. Well,
let me ask you a question. Do you think that it is, you know, there's an effort of people that when they grow a garden, they think of themselves as equal as a farmer. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm growing food.
Sure.
Blah, blah, blah. And I mean, that's fine to think that, but do you think it's almost a way for people to be like, I'm a farmer, see? I'm growing food, see?
Yeah, you know what? I wouldn't ever describe it as that, but the way I would describe it is, it's back to the reference of flexing.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, like, I got to rotate my crops. I got to rotate my crops. Because, you know, like I said, and I practice it, you know, as much as I can. I mean, you know, it's a true pain in the ass. You know what I mean? Like, you'll get your whole plant and you'll be like, oh shit, you know, I had a tomato there last year.
Yeah.
You know, oh, I wanted to grow another tomato and I can't. So, you know, it's real eye-opening when you kind of hit these roadblocks and stumbles and stuff like that. And, you know, I just kind of make a habit to rotate the whole damn thing. You know, I know there's certain crops at the same time that should be and need to be rotated and don't need to be and stuff like that. But I look at it as I just move them around, you know, and I base it all off of what I cannot change in my garden. And that's my trellises. So those are spaces that I can't use for anything but a trellising plant. You look like you're going to say something.
No, I was just thinking about the potatoes and tomatoes thing. I couldn't let it go in my mind. And I was thinking to myself that, which I'll come back to, for rotating your crops, I really want to know, have you experienced some of the problems that, you know, we've read about and some others have experienced? Like, do you think that one year when you didn't rotate crops, insert problem? Or is this really like you're taking the precaution?
I'm taking the precaution.
Yeah.
I take, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I'm taking the precaution.
And that, there's a pause I have around that too.
Yeah. And this year is the first year, and, every time I do something for the first time, it gets all effed up. But I'm going to put those eggplants, I'm 99% sure that I'm going to put those eggplants right there where those tomatoes were. Not only were those tomatoes there, but those tomatoes succumbed to septoria leaf spot last year. And I'm going to put something in the same family right there. And I'm not 100% there yet. There's still a chance. And, some things might need to be changed. And the more I'm looking at my notebook now where I have everything written down. And as I look at it, I'm like, shit, I do see something now. The more I look at it like an easier change that could, be free. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, man, I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me to not take that precaution. You know what I mean? Now, do I think you have to do it every year? No. I do not think you have to do it every year. And you know why I don't? Because we're adding stuff to our soil every year.
Yeah, but is it throwing good after bad? So if there's already disease and pests in the soil, you're putting more soil on top of it. It's not like you're burying it.
Yeah, but you're diluting it and it's not as heavy. And, there's just a lot of different things. You're mixing the soil up. So, because, one thought that I had was like, hey, if I plant all of my plants on one side of the bed, like in a clump, and then I just move them to the other side of the bed, is that enough?
And then there's also the question of if you've not experienced the disease again, are you in the free and the clear? I was looking here because in my mind I went back to the potatoes and the tomatoes, two of my favorites, and while they're in the same nightshade family, I think what I remember reading has been in year 1, if you plant tomatoes, don't put potatoes there in year 2. And it's under the same thought of if you plant tomatoes in year 1, don't plant tomatoes in the same place in year 2. So it's not so much that they can't be planted together, if you will, or near each other. It's that you have nightshades in this bed. The following year, you don't want to put those same nightshades there.
Right.
So I think
that's what I'm dealing with is I have tomatoes, nightshade, eggplant, nightshade. And so the question is like, do you want that there? And that's something that I have to come up with an answer. And I have to come up with an answer soon for it. And, like I said, the more I look, I'm like, yeah, okay, I can make this change. I can switch something out. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that tomatoes and eggplants don't go well together, growing together. So that's something else to keep into account, and I do. So, we've talked about companion plantings and stuff like that, but I will tell you that if you have a whole bunch of different nightshades in one bed, that's just a breeding ground for some nasty shit to happen. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like you already have something that wants to attack a tomato. Yeah. And then it comes and attacks, the potato, and then it'll come, it's too much. And
so last year I had Colorado potato beetles. And when I was researching it last year, I was growing potatoes in containers, 20-gallon containers, and they were off, away from the bed, but only by a few feet away from the other beds. And so when I was reading about it, I'm pretty sure I also read that the Colorado potato beetles can jump to tomato leaves. Again, same family, right? And so had I planted them together, there was a chance, and I'll double back and I'll correct myself on a new episode if this isn't the case, but there would be a chance that the infestation where these beetles were eating the leaves, it could have got to my tomatoes, right? So if the potatoes had stayed healthy, one could argue no issue with them next to the tomatoes. But once that potato became sickly, that plant, then I'm jeopardizing potentially other plants that are near it. Those pests, if the pets like that same thing,
Yeah. And so that being said right now, I'm like, maybe I'm 90% sure those eggplants are going to go in that bed.
Well, you know what? I do a part of my garden style. I like being able to go to the potato bed. being able to go to the space where I'm growing tomatoes. Like I like growing things in the same space, the same things in the same space. I don't like to walk all over my garden to collect, all of the peppers.
No, I don't either. I like to have them all like you do. And it's simply because it's like, if I go to work a bed, like I can work that one bed up. I'll go into that one bed, be like, okay, I need to trim my tomatoes. Boom, boom, boom. You're in there and you're trimming up. And last year was the first year that I had 2 tomato beds, and I did not care for it. I did not like it at all. Part of it was the tomatoes that I was growing in one bed, but it was just too much. And I don't think moving forward, this year I am having it again, but I've also added another bed. Yeah. So and I'm also doing multiple kinds of tomatoes. So,
and there's also an issue with just space. So not so much. So the way we're talking about how we prefer to garden, it could lend itself well to crop rotation if I have all of a thing in one bed. So my collards are I can't even get straight in my head the number of beds now. There are 15 total, true number 15 total garden beds in the garden now, I think. And I've 302. Yeah, right. So I moved the collard greens from bed 302 to bed 305 last year. Right. And now they're going to go back to bed 304. So, like that, it's easier to say I'm going to grow all of these collards in this space. And when it comes to moving them to this other bed, the preventative measures you're taking beyond crop rotation, the fight that you're in when it comes to my favorite, the cabbage moth, I'm able to protect those collards better when they're sitting in one space versus if they're planted around. Now, there's the whole idea of, folding in, companion planting to ward off those, pests, but we're not going to get into all of that today.
No, and I think, what? Let's talk about that briefly, though.
No, okay.
No, I just want to say one thing, and it's all about taking all these little steps to combat a potentially one big problem. Now, one of the issues I have, though, is we talk about coming in and we're growing a garden, and a lot of times when we talk about gardening, we talk about pests and problems and diseases. And are we just gardening to manage a problem that's not even happened yet? Like, that's the real question. And I'm going to tell you, for me, yes, that's how I am gardening. Because I know how much that problem can devastate you. You know what I mean? So it's like, if I save a square foot in my garden and put a marigold there, is it going to do anything? I don't know. But I know what? It helps. Yeah. And I know, what? It helps against nematodes. It helps against other things. If I put a nasturtium in there, is it going to help? I know that the nasturtium is going to get chewed up and look like shit, but it's going to attract stuff to it. So, okay, it's a big pain in the ass to rotate, but I'm going to go ahead and rotate anyways just to make sure. It's all these different things that we do that that allow it to be, allow us to have an easier growing season. Because I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, my tomatoes died out 1.5 to 2 months early last year, and it was depressing. It was depressing to have that. So that's not something that you want to go through. So I think having these things, but I also think that don't let it stress you out and get you just wear you down. You know what I mean? I think that's important too. So your tomatoes, they didn't die as a result of lack of crop rotation. There was something else going on there. Yeah. Yeah. They had that septoria leaf spot, which was, let me go ahead and air my dirty laundry, was me doing a square foot gardening plan and not being completely read up on it, and then not taking and trimming my plants the way I need to get the correct amount of airflow through. So that was the long and short of that. And now if you look at my garden plan this year, I've given them extra space. Instead of 4, I've given them 3 in that same row. So good job on that. I wonder, the way you described it though was, are we gardening out of fear?
So I know that there is some caution, right? Again, it hasn't been my experience where I've been devastated by insert some pest, but it doesn't mean it doesn't happen, So I think there's a balance between being reckless, with gardening versus, taking some reasonable precautions. Everything you described with the nasturtiums, with the marigolds, like those are easy plug-ins, right? So I think whether or not they're helping you tremendously or not, it's not hurting you, and so
it adds color. It makes sense.
Yeah.
And what the hell? You know what I mean? Like, okay, no problem. So
one thing I do like about crop rotation and the thought of it is, especially for the home gardener, didn't think this was going to happen, did you? We have talked about how...
Who are you talking to?
I'm talking to you. You say, who is this
think
talking?
That was going to happen, did you?
Yeah.
I thought you were talking like another person.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm coming around, kind of, sort of.
Gotcha. Okay.
So for the home gardener, right, you have all kinds of things that obstruct sun. Right? Whether or not it's a fence, whether or not it's trees, whether or not, it's buildings. And so your garden gets different light at different times. And as you move crops around, even if it's with the goal of crop rotation, I feel like you'll find, these collards really do grow well in this space. Right? And you won't know that until you move those things around. So I changed the orientation of my collards this past year. So I grew them in the exact same size bed, 7.5 by 3.5 feet. And I grew them in that bed in 2019. I grew them in a different bed, but the same size in 2020. And I got less collards in 2020 than I did in 2019. And it's just based on the way that I planted them. And then also I think it's based on the space. 2020's bed was closer to the fence, so it basically is a bit more shaded compared to 2019's bed, and then the orientation. But if I hadn't moved them, I wouldn't have known that, So I've learned a lesson in 2020. I'm going to default to the planting style that I used in 2019. But if I didn't have the intention to move them around, I wouldn't have kind of learned that lesson, if it makes sense.
Right.
So
yeah, and I mean, I typically plant in rows. That's just what I've always done, and I've toyed around this year of like planting my tomatoes on one side and, kind of getting a little bit more clumpy with it. You know what I mean? And it's not easy to change something you've done for a long time. I have had success for a very long time doing this, and I've seen success my whole life with gardening. And, there's a reason why not only farmers, but people with what I describe as a big garden rows for days. Each one of them, they'll just have row. And there's a lot of bigger, more famous gardeners, in the space, they plant in rows typically, Now their flowers are different. Yeah. And they'll clump flowers around their vegetables and stuff, but generally speaking, they are planted in rows as well.
Well, so maybe I need to go back because you keep on describing this as, so my beds are lined up using the square foot garden method. So there are rows, right? My 7-foot bed, there's basically 7 square feet. Right. And that's a row. And then I got the second row, then the third row. And so I'm planting those vegetables in those spots. I'm kind of not just cherry picking things and just plotting them out. What I'm, again, talking about rows is a straight row of soil that's unobstructed by even raised beds, like the frame, that you can walk. It's like walking down the street. That's a straight row. And that is a sizable row in my mind. So that's how I describe planting in rows versus not.
So, what I'm just talking about is, like, let's say you're going to put bush beans 1 square foot straight down that 7 foot. That's a row.
Yeah.
Versus going 1, 2, 3, 4, like making a little block or something like that.
Yeah, octagon or something like that. Yeah.
Is that which one do you do? Option A or B?
I typically inside of my garden bed plant in a row.
Yeah. Okay. So you plant in rows too.
Yeah.
So
but you understand the reason why was describing rows differently earlier, though, right?
No, I still don't.
Okay.
I'm about as lost as you could be.
That's okay. All right.
I feel like I'm driving on the wrong side of the road in a new country.
Do not enter. So, yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say with that is it's look at a cornfield. The way that row looks, I define that as growing in a row where you're going to walk, there's a 1 foot to 2 foot space in between,
right,
where you're walking and planting, right?
Well, now, if you think about it this way, I look at, an 8x4 bed, 7x3.5, whatever yours is, is in a micro climate of garden, of a micro farm. Very micro. So, like, if you're planting and you have your bush beans going straight down, that's planting in a row, So that's how I look at it. And the reason why is like, well, why the hell are they talking about rows and clumps?
Yeah,
and What the fuck is wrong with Ben? Is he high? No, I assure you I'm not. Not this early in the day. But it's all about, like, when you do that, you're spreading it out more. You're spreading the interaction that it has with the soil out even more and so you can't move it from one side of the bed to the other. You literally have to go to like a completely different bed. And that's why I refer to it as being maybe an issue, maybe not. I don't know.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I'm just ready to move on, I think.
Damn, that's cold.
Yeah. Someone's like, yeah, girl, me too.
I know. I can hear it right now. Do it. But, and the reason why I asked that is because I need to decide, like, and this has been something for years because I do not like crop rotation. I don't like it. So
And you don't like it because you want the freedom to plant what you want to plant where you want to plant it?
That's
why I don't like it.
I don't like it because I'm like you. I like my tomatoes in this one bed, and this is where I want them in this one bed. Yeah. I don't want to have to move them around. I don't want to have to move this stuff around. I don't give a shit about, change. Like, I want to move something because it looks different.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like this year, I'm moving my sweet potatoes completely, and I'm not really thrilled about where they're going.
Yeah.
Because I know that the vines are going to come out of the bed and they're going to take over, and it's just like, really? Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm not very thrilled about it, and I'm having a big issue with that because I really don't want them there. You know what I mean? I see a huge effing headache come out of it. But at the same time, you need
to find a different place for it. Yeah.
I do. But the thing is I have a place for it. They did good there last year. So what do you do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So in this instance, because I think I'm going to be on a 3-year rotation with my collard greens. So everything you read will say, don't plant the same thing that you planted last year in relation to crop rotation. Sometimes I'll see for at least 2 years, rare, but this rotation that you see again, that whole circular rotation is typically a 4-year rotation. And that's where I think things, you can play around with it a little bit. So could I manage this and move my collards to a 4th bed in the 4th year? Yeah, I could, but I'm going back to the bed that I planted them in air quote year 1, so, and we're going to see. And, I hope that I'm not proven wrong. I think they will be fine. I'd like to leave the collards where they were planted last year even. I just planted them differently. But again, I have the space in this situation, so I'm going to go ahead and move them, right?
Yeah. If you can't tell, this is actually one subject in gardening that I really struggle with. It's I understand a lot of things, and I think it's all about, not knowing, not recognizing the unseen.
Yeah.
Like there's this kind of, it's kind of a situation here where it's like shit could go really bad, but it might not. So
it's like you're paying for insurance, right? So it may go wrong or not.
Right.
And it's sometimes we've accepted that this is what you do, and on the rare occasion that you have an accident in a loaner vehicle, like someone may have done on this podcast, it's nice to have insurance. And it's nice to have insurance that says, oh, we'll treat it as a rental and you don't have to pay the deductible because good Lord. But I think that I hope that I could live the rest of my garden days and realize at the end of it that crop rotation was, a crock, and I say that in light of like, I hope that I don't have any problems that point back to this, right? And if it takes me moving some things around. Another thing, sweet potatoes you mentioned, I'm moving where I grew sweet potatoes last year. I grew them in grow bags last year. I'm moving them into a bed, right? And so in part, again, I knew you would love that, but I am doing more grow bag growing. So just so you know, I know you don't love that.
And see, my sweet potatoes are going in a bed that's now got a trellis on two sides. So the vines can only come out of one side, and both of the sides that it's going to come out of are path. Yeah. So it's like,
but that's going back to it. I don't want to open the road conversation. When you have a wide open field to grow in, when you don't have to worry about things like, oh, this is in my walking path in my backyard, right? It points back to it's easier to move things around from plot A to plot B to plot C to plot D because it's all growing space. For me, I'm looking like I'm moving it to a bed I'm not crazy about either, because I'm now trying to balance. It's the very first bed in my front yard garden. I'm now trying to balance what can I grow in the spring to get in and out before it's time for me to get the sweet potatoes in. Because we've talked about this, like when it's go time for sweet potatoes for me, I need to get them in the ground, right? And yeah, exactly. And this bed is probably, it's okay. It has a trellis. That's in part the reason why I'm moving them there, the sweet potatoes there. But now it's like I'm burning a lot of that time, my garden time, for that one bed. You know what I'm saying? And I have some ideas how I'll work that out. But that's not something that you have to necessarily consider when you're in this big field of a garden. And it's something that the home gardener has to consider. You opened up with, you have these trellises. And so there's certain things that you have put those trellises up to grow, right? There are a bunch of things that are vining and all, but you may not be growing all of them.
There's not as much as you would think, though. Yeah, when it comes to rotation wise, there's really not as much as you would think.
That's my point, right?
You have cucumbers, beans, and peas.
I've seen some people grow tomatoes, but you have to train them to grow up that trellis.
We're saying trellising crops. Those are the three crops that I grow that are basic. So, you can work those all the way around. And there's different kinds of beans, but it's the same thing. They all, green beans, black beans, cowpeas, they all kind of fall in the same. Yeah. So it's like, you got to be careful, but.
And you don't want to not take advantage of the trellis.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Right?
I didn't put them up there to look at them.
Exactly. That's an investment. And
honestly, they're ugly without it.
Took the words out of my mouth, right? Yeah. That's just some structure here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think all of those things. So it's all of the other things that we implement for our garden for one reason or another kind of interrupt this idea of this plain, 4-year, 4 garden bed crop rotation method that you see in many places. It's not impossible to do. Again, some folks may do it, especially if you're starting to grow different vegetables. You may find yourself doing it. I think a great example is you have a brand new garden bed. So you could, if you wanted, you could start year 1, plot A there, right? Yeah. And then you can follow suit when it comes to rotating it. I think we'll find these next few years will be interesting for me because I think I have probably about maxed out in the garden bed space for my property. I have one more idea, but I think I've probably maxed out.
Well, and so that's the thing too, is as you add garden beds, you're naturally rotating as well because you're like, oh, I'm up with this here. So, each year you get that break, and 1 year is all it takes. You know what I mean? So it's another one of those things where you might not realize it, or you say, well, you know what, maybe this year I'm gonna grow my peppers in pots, when then naturally you're giving it that rest. So, and it's not as hard as you would think, but as you go through, if you want a really diverse garden, it gets difficult.
Yeah, that's exactly it. If you're growing 4 things, then there you have it. Boom,
super easy. And that book that you read out, that was what I did not like about it is, I mean, that's the most basic garden that's ever created. Yeah. And I know it's for illustration purposes, but you know what? That kind of bullshit don't help. That easy, this is just for illustrative purposes. Fuck that. Yeah. I want to know how to do it. You know what I mean? I want to grow because I don't go to the grocery store and I don't buy 4 things. You put 4 things in a salad. So I want to know how to do it. Like, don't cheap out on me. I paid $20 for this shit. I want to know what the fuck's going on.
Yeah.
And it drives you crazy because it's like, dude, it's not like, and the problem is you go online and you start looking, and it's like you said, rotate every year. You could make it 2 years. You could make it 3 years. So it comes down to the point of you've got to pick what's your gospel and what you're going to go by. And that's a tough decision to make, man. Like, so who am I going to trust? And I'm going to tell you right now, don't trust me because I don't really fucking know, nor do either one of us believe in it. We half-ass practice it, but that's just saying, you know what I mean? So it's like,
how did this happen?
This happened because I got fired up because it started aggravating me, and I'm looking at it and it's like, what the hell? So that's my thought on the whole situation in a nutshell.
This is like at the award show, like he's being honored. He's up there and he's like dropping F-bombs. And the guy is like, am I supposed to turn the music on? I don't know what to do here.
Turn the music on. Turn the music on, Leonard. Damn it. Stop me. Because it's messed up, though, man. I feel like people don't get what they need to help them, and it confuses you.
Yeah.
That's what I think, because nobody grows squash, tomato, potato. Yeah, if you look in that book, none of those plants all had the same families. They were all different. And a lot of times what people will do is they'll clump them in with like spring and summer vegetables too and give you illustrations. And that shit drives me fucking crazy.
Yeah.
It makes me mad. Sorry for the language, everybody, but you got to deal with it today, apparently.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's never going to cover all of the vegetables you would want to grow. And even if you think about that first year gardener, I was a gal I went to high school with sent me a note yesterday saying, she had pictures of garden beds her husband had built. And you know what this does to me. I was just gushing, like, they're so pretty, right? They don't even have dirt in them yet. It's just the wood, right? And so she was like, what did she say? Yeah, she thinks she wants to grow tomatoes, cucumbers, and peppers, which is really traditional, right?
Yeah.
And so if we apply this crop rotation, do I need to be advising her? All right. Okay. So this is year 1 for you. All right. So you need to keep in mind where you're going to move these plants to next year. Like, no, I'm not doing that shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, and in my mind, that's a huge deterrent, So again, I believe in it, right? I believe that it's appropriate for certain things and certain garden spaces. And so while you may have a farm that's 100% applying crop rotation rules, 20 acres of a farm, that's not my space, and so Here we are.
And now that the more and more I think about it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my neck out there and I'm going to say, if you rotate within the garden bed, I think it's okay. I think it's okay as long as, I'm gonna go ahead and say that, you know what I mean? Especially like a smaller plant, I'm gonna go ahead and say it's okay. Reason being is the instruction that's given is not given for people like you and I who have, 400 beds each. They're made for the one in-ground bed.
Yeah.
Traditionally speaking.
Yeah.
Back in the Dizzy, there was no raised bed. It was, I'm going to work up this land and I'm going to get it amended and grow. Yeah. And so that's what I think I'm going to call it that. I'm going to call it good on that. So,
yeah. And I think if you look at like the one, I don't remember, she showed me 2 pictures. Was it 1 or 2 beds? But if you look at, let's call it 1 bed that he built that she's going to grow in, chances are she's going to have 1 single tomato plant. Yeah. Chances are she's going to have 1 or 2 peppers. Chances are she may have, this year,
Next year
1 or 2 cucumbers. Because that's the way, listen.
That's how it works.
I said, hey, keep me updated because you know what it's going to be. Go bigger. No, I'm joking. But my point is that I look at crop rotation like, 10 tomato plants, 20 tomato plants, 60 tomato plants versus her 1. Right. I think she'll be fine if she puts that tomato plant in the same exact place, even in that bed, next year. Would she be better off if she moved it to the other side? You know, I don't think that could hurt, you know. So yeah, I mean, I think that it's an interesting read. I think it's a great example of one of the things that, I don't know, it almost becomes a what do you call it? A mascot of the show. Like the thing that complicates gardening, perhaps unnecessarily. So I'm sure there are people that are listening now that are like, but those 3 years that my garden bed was ruined. And if that's the case, tell us your story, right?
Yeah.
You know, I'd love to hear some more real world examples of things that went wrong that you really believe point back to the lack of crop rotation. Because I've not read anything that says, maybe a tinge of it, nothing that says, oh, now you're going to benefit plot B by moving this vegetable there. No, again, you're running away from a problem.
Well, no, there is some things that will benefit. I'm not going to open that can now, but there are some. And look at it this way: planting peas.
Yeah, but see, I think we're mixing things there. But yeah.
You know, they're nitrogen fixers. I mean, it is what it is. You can say all you want.
So it's a side effect of you happen to be growing peas and now you're rotating them. So you embed, what is it? They have peas here. Peas are in plot D. So when peas move to plot A next year, it's going to improve plot A. I get that. You know.
I worked that into my plan though. Like when I say I'm going to plant my peas here, that's what I'm thinking about, is like they're going to fix the nitrogen. So
we should talk offline about the episode that this is going to become when I say 3 pea plants ain't improving shit, you know, versus, you know, this is really designed to say 20 pea plants.
And now,
you know?
That is something different, you know, and I tend to agree with you on that. But again, who are we to say that? I mean, again, it's a micro farm. Is what you have to look at each garden bed. So you can roll your eyes, but you know that.
Don't be calling me out for the people listening that had no idea I was rolling my eyes.
They need to know. They need to know. They need to know what I have to deal with. So, I mean, you know, it's fixing. You know, what is it fixing? Like how far? I don't think it fixes the whole damn bed. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure it fixes a certain area, but I mean, I don't know, man. It's really confusing. And the long and short of it is I feel that it's important as much as it is just to kind of eliminate a problem. You know, it's like you said, it's an insurance policy. You know, because you will get a disease or a pest.
Yeah,
it's going to happen.
Yeah,
you know. So, what is your? Are you still like rotation? No, or
I don't know how much I've flip flopped in this episode. I believe there's
flip flopped a bit.
Yeah, I believe there's certain vegetables that I've been convinced could be detrimental.
Yeah.
If they get infested with some plant or some pest. And I believe that drives me alone to move them around. I don't practice this 4 plot or 4 garden bed rotation method, so I'm not moving everything intentionally. Right. I'm going to grow melons up my trellis. That sounds dirty. I'm going to grow melons in my garden bed, and I'm going to train them to vine up the trellis. They're going to be in the same spot as they were last year. I'm going to put most of my peppers in the same spot they were last year. And I think they'll be fine. Obviously you guys will learn about it here if they're not. Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with you. I think some things are important. And I think it just kind of drives my whole, those certain crops are what drives my whole rotation schedule. Well said. And it's around my tomatoes and stuff like that, and I think now carrots are a kind of a concern because I've gotten into those. I think it was, what's it called? The carrot knot or something like that. Something that, and that's the thing is what you can't see. I'm not really worried about an insect. I feel like I could treat an insect. You know what I'm saying? If I had to, I'd go out and get some nasty shit and put on it. You know what I mean? Before I would let it ruin everything. But it's that stuff you can't see, man. It's those diseases and stuff that I'm not sold on that shit, man. Yeah. That's my real worry. So yeah. I'm also leaning a little bit more, and we'll weave this into a future episode. I don't think it's worth a whole episode by itself, but the benefits of the colder weather when it comes to some of these things. Oh, yeah. Compared to, when it's hella hot. And what zone are you in again?
Well, what zone are you in?
We'll talk about that once we come back from the break.
And then, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for somebody, we haven't figured out who, to give the recipe of the day. Have you noticed? It's mango season. Have you noticed?
No, I haven't noticed. I haven't noticed.
You're in you're coming into the end of it, but
yeah.
There's I've been working on this recipe and I'm ready to share it. So I'm sure.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry. I just like the record to show that we are at the end of the season, and you are now sharing a recipe for a fruit that is almost at the end of the season. Okay. Yeah. This is very reminiscent of your cucumber recipe a week after cucumbers were dead.
But I've been working on it. That's the trick.
All right, okay.
I've been creating it. And
we appreciate your efforts.
Yeah. So I'm sure you can go online and figure it out. But, one day I was like, you know what? I'm going to try and make this recipe. So I made a mango coconut oatmeal. Oh. And so what I did is I took, and it would have worked better if I used full fat coconut milk in the can, but I used light because that's just the kind of guy I am. I try to watch my pounds. And I put half a can in a pot with a half a cup or a cup, whatever you want. If you want it a little bit more soupy, half a cup. If you don't, whole cup of oatmeal raw. And you just cook it in the oatmeal. And I put one whole mango in. I pit it, cube it, and drop it in and cook it. Okay. And then I just cook it up till it's done, medium, maybe 5 minutes or so. Get it boil and then simmer it. Just let the oatmeal get cooked real good. And then what I'll take is, I've been playing around with this and I've used a date a couple times.
Okay.
To sweeten it. And I'll chop a date up and I'll drop it in and sweeten it with that. And then, a little pinch of salt, let it cool. And then at this point, you can add, if you really want to, you can add a little bit of vanilla extract in it if that's what you would like. But I just put it in there and eat it straight up. And it's pretty damn good.
The date adds a little bit of thickness too, like a gooiness to it too, yeah?
No, it's the sugar.
Well, I mean, I know why you said that it adds it makes it sweeter. But the texture of the
it should be gooey anyways.
Yeah.
It should be thick, but yeah, I don't know. Do you eat dates?
I do.
Okay, yeah, they're delightful. And I mean, before I was
Did
putting
you say
a
they're
date
fucking
in,
delightful?
I stopped before the U came out.
2 absolutely perfect words to describe dates. Yes.
Before I was doing that, I was putting like Splenda in or something like that. Not Splenda. What is it? Stevia. I was putting it's just sprinkling stevia because, it was missing something. And you could even go as far as adding like coconut flakes too.
Yeah. Well, when you first said it, I thought, when I said to myself, like I said it out loud, coconuts. And I was thinking coconut flakes versus the coconut milk.
Yeah, it doesn't really, the coconut flakes don't really give it that flavor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's the texture of them, the stringy in the mouth for breakfast and stuff. I'm not game.
I, for years and years, did not eat complete left turn, but German chocolate cake. I used to always joke, the coconuts make me go,
yeah.
But now I love them. I guess I grew out of it,
Yeah, it's weird like that, but it took me 5 things of oatmeal, I think, before I started to get it. And it's still like a work in progress because I feel like it should be more complicated, but 4 or 5
I love
ingredients.
the use of mango though there.
Yeah. Mangoes are perfect right now, man. They're so juicy and delicious.
I'm certain I have a can of coconut milk. I'm a big fan of this type of kind of oatmeal concoction. So I got a couple that'll come
Oatmeals?
up. Yeah.
Well, what are you waiting on? You know I like oatmeal.
Well, we'll see. I mean,
yeah.
Oh, goodness. I'm a little bit tender here. You'll get them soon enough. You'll get them when the audience gets them.
Usually I use banana to sweeten it, but I just didn't feel like mango and banana. I mean, I know it goes together, but I just didn't want it. So
you don't ever do you guys eat honey?
Yeah.
Okay. Honey or maple syrup, or is that too sweet?
Well, so I started with maple syrup, and it was just maple. Yeah. And then I put honey in it, and honey was good.
Yeah.
But I like dates. So it's that flavor. So usually what I would do is I would go either honey or dates.
Yeah.
You can pick one, you know.
Good point.
We don't
about
always have dates.
The maple syrup and that it basically changes the,
Changes the flavor, man.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. And agave nectar will work, you know, if you want to do that if you're vegan.
Yeah.
You know, even when I was vegan, I ate honey because it didn't hurt animals. So, you know, it is what it is.
You know, I'm really working on, I got plenty of breakfast salads, but I'm really working on making sure I get that breakfast in and pretty early. I don't know how many times I've been, you know, it's 9:30, 10 o'clock. And I'm like, should I call this lunch or what? I've been up for 5 hours, you know, so yeah. Quick and easy and to the point. Appreciate it. Do
it. So, and that's it. We are rotated our crops. Mm-hmm. We've cooked a breakfast. I mean, what the hell else do we need to do?
Oh, well, I think we need one clarification.
Oh,
and
shit.
I waited all the way until the end of this episode.
I wasn't going to make you do it.
Yeah, hoping that maybe some people had already tuned out.
Yeah.
So I want to say it for
this.
Yeah, say it for the official record. Maybe I will put it at the top of the show another time. So there's an episode that I hold near and dear to my heart that's a garden zone battle. And then in that episode, you can make a drinking game out of how many times I said I'm in zone B, as in Batavia. And we have determined that is a lie.
Batavia is in zone 6. A is an asshole.
That's the way that I shall remember it from now on. And I gave him that just as a reference, guys and gals.
She sure did. And I stole it.
Yeah.
I earned the right, too, because I've been berated for months about my zone.
And I can't explain exactly how I got here.
This is like terrible apology.
Yeah, it's like once you know how like once you're wrong about something, but that's all you remember and you just continue to be wrong about it. So all of that said, it's my hope that from this day forward, since we've aired the truth here, that I can still now hound a special someone about being now 2 whole zones in front of me. So as a matter of fact, this strengthens my case, because if I'm in zone 6A as an asshole, which I have been, and you're in zone 8A, which is all right, that's 2 whole zones ahead of me. You see, this is a really bad apology.
That is, as a matter of fact, the worst apology I've ever heard, received, or been a part of. I've never really given a public apology, so how did it feel to give your first public apology?
I feel like in this day and age, that it fits right in. Yeah. In all seriousness, it's a great example of how you can be off and confident, and scream it from the rooftop. So I get how you made that misstep. It doesn't mean I can't begrudge you for it. But
I sat there quietly and let you do it. And I remember looking at it. So you were like right on the line of the 6A, 6B. So I was like, whatever. Yeah. But I think it doesn't matter.
It doesn't really. But again,
it doesn't really matter.
For those that are listening and that are planting and rotating your crops based on my zone, it's no longer 6B as in Batavia. I wonder if I could move to validate 6B. I'm going to poke around and see if there's some places that, are near me for 6B.
You probably just have to move down the street.
Yeah, just move my whole house and my whole garden just to be right in that garden zone battle.
It's worth it. That's called a mental condition. You can get help for that.
That's what I got.
So look, everybody. Batavia's apologized, which she should have. Leonard's sleeping on the couch over here. We've rotated crops. We've made breakfast. What we need you to do is we need you to give us a like and a subscribe and jam that notification bell if you're watching us so you can get notified when we come out. Check out our mini-sodes every Tuesday, full episodes on Thursday, Saturdays, tips on YouTube. We love you guys. We'll talk to you next time. And don't forget to come back because we are doing our spring gardening series. Next one is planting your spring garden. Holla.
See ya.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. If you want to see what we're up to or just stay up to date on all the announcements regarding the show or anything gardening, then you can follow us on Instagram at Backyard Gardens TV.
We love seeing what you guys are doing, so use hashtag BYG Podcast in your posts, and we'll be sharing your gardens with the Backyard Gardens community.
And check us out on YouTube at Backyard Gardens, where we will post this show, all of our other shows, clips, and then also some gardening tips and just gardening entertainment. And you can see us at our website at backyardgardenstv.com. But that's it for today's show. So help us as we learn to grow and grow for change. And until next time, we'll catch you guys later. We'll call this one a wrap.
Now you know why people feel like celebrating at harvest time.
All over the world, people have feasting and good times when the crops have been gathered in.